It started here, and now it's going all the way to the Attorney General's office. Republican senators are demanding answers from Eric Holder over the Justice Department's role in the president's controversial recess appointments. On this very show a few nights ago, Ohio Republican Congressman Bill Johnson setting off a firestorm after suggesting those appointments could be unconstitutional. Utah Republican Mike Lee, one of those senators, questioning the Justice Department in the matter. Senator, joining us on the phone right now, what response, if any, have you gotten?
We haven't gotten any response yet, but we're still waiting for it, and we think we have every right to demand a response here, because this breaks with 90 years of tradition and practice and precedent.
Well, it doesn't break with that precedent, right? I mean, presidents do this kind of stuff all the time.
Well, they do. They do make recess appointments, but not in this circumstance, where we've had a Senate that has not been adjourned for more than 3 days at any time. And Justice Department.
But the Senate wasn't in service. Wasn't that the argument, that there was essentially no one there? And I guess they could. You're right, Senator. They could phone somebody, see if someone picks up the line. But Harry Reid and company weren't around.
Well, it doesn't matter. We were in a pro forma session. We've had pro forma sessions at least every 3 days.
Well, that's a big distinction, right? I mean, that's what they're going to argue. I guess what I'm saying, that we can argue the nuances of this, but is this really going anywhere? Does it resonate with anyone? Because I guess the fear of some Republican colleagues of yours is, be careful what you wish for, because a Republican gets in, does the same thing, you're not going to like it.
No, I don't buy that argument, not for a second. This is not the kind of scenario in which you'd have a slippery slope problem for what you've described. Here, what we're talking about is a situation in which the Senate doesn't regard itself as being in recess. Neither does the House. The Senate wasn't required to obtain the consent of the House to adjourn for longer than 3 days, as would be required under Article 1, Section 5, Clause 4 of the Constitution. So we don't regard ourselves as in recess, nor are we regarded under the 90-year-old precedent as being in recess, because we've had at least a pro forma session every 3 days. But
would the Senate have even taken up these nominations? Wasn't there such opposition to them in the first place that it might have been tabled altogether? So one way or the other, the president couldn't win. That,
Neil, is the Senate's prerogative, just as it is the Senate's prerogative to decide whether or not it's in recess.
But his prerogative, no, you're right, Senator, technically, but his prerogative is just like President Bush's prerogative was putting someone in the United Nations to represent him. He had business to get done, so he went ahead and appointed John Bolton to the United Nations because he knew he was going nowhere fast with the Senate. This president more or less said, look, I know I'm going nowhere fast with the Republicans, even though they're not in the majority. The fact of the matter is they could stymie anything I do. And so I'm going to use this opportunity where we can quibble about in session or not, but I've got to get moving. I've got to get hopping.
Yeah, well, that is the president's rationale, but that is lawless. And I agree with what Charles Krauthammer said the other day, which is that this is a very cynical view that motivates what the president's doing here. Basically what he's saying is, I can decide when the Senate's in recess, even when the Senate doesn't think it's in recess, even when the Senate's gone out of its way to make sure that it's not in recess. Is this serious enough
to be, if you're saying he's doing something potentially unconstitutional, you know, that's an impeachable offense. Is this?
Well, look, any high crime or misdemeanor can be an impeachable offense, and whether or not some action is considered a high crime or misdemeanor is up in the first instance the House of Representatives that has the initial impeachment power. At this point, we're trying to gather evidence as to why the president thinks he has this authority. That's why several Republicans, including myself, have sent the president's attorney general a letter asking him whether or not they were consulted, whether or not they've abandoned this 90-year precedent that has worked well, saying that no matter what.
And you haven't gotten a response from him yet, right?
No response yet, but we're anxiously awaiting one, and we demand one, because this is lawless. This is potentially a very lawless move that could essentially nullify the Senate's prerogative of confirming presidential appointees.
We will watch closely, sir. Thank you, Senator. Always good having you on.